Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? In life, we manage to do many different things. And we transfer from one area of expertise to another, and somehow they all work together. And with me is a woman who has done a number of different things that they've all seemed to just flow from one project to another project. And with me is Nina Utne, and welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start at the beginning. You started foundations.
I started a foundation, with cohorts. I wasn't the only one.
All right. And then you also moved into having a family and running a magazine.
Yep. I've had a pretty varied life.
All right. Let's start with, how did you come to start some foundations? I believe you've started 2 foundations.
No,
and a school.
Let's see. I guess I describe my husband as being a chronic entrepreneur, but I guess that the description sort of applies to me as well.
I'd say so. Reading your bio.
Yeah. And I guess I've always been interested in that sort of generative impulse when things are, I guess it's that giving birth kind of impulse where you're launching something out into the world. But actually, what I'm doing now at the magazine is picking up where my husband kind of left off after 15 years, and I jumped in and without really certainly not any training in that arena, started running the company.
Well, wait a second. We didn't even talk about the magazine.
So okay. Hold on.
Sorry. Wait. Here we have the magazine. It's Chutney.
Utne rhymes with chutney.
Utne rhymes with, and here we have Utne, the magazine. It's a great magazine.
We like to think so.
It's a forward-thinking magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So let's concentrate on this for a moment. How do you come up with your ideas? How do you come up with ideas that are going to happen and let the world know what's coming about?
Well, I think that the magazine really is a reflection of people, not just me, but everyone on the staff and everyone who's passed through the company and so forth, really trying to live life fully and trying to inspire other people to live life fully. And so, we just pursue the things that we're intrigued with. And the way that we do it is that we have a library of over 1,500 publications, and then between magazines and all kinds of other sources online and so on and so forth, we scan over 2,000 different kinds of sources for each issue. And we kind of look for where the juice is, where the energy is, and our intention is really to find what's breaking through in the culture and to give voice to hope and possibility, which is sorely needed these days. A lot as trend predictors, and with all due modesty, we've been pretty good at it. But I think it's not. We don't go out exactly looking for trends. I mean, sometimes we'll identify things that are happening, but it's more. It's more that we're really sort of sensing where energy and passion and excitement is, and we've found that if we do that sincerely and from the heart ourselves, that we're pretty right on. I mean, when we're really hot, I think, is when people say, "How did you know that's what I was thinking about?" And that's really, and I think that if you're really involved in a sincere inquiry in your own life, you start to find, the common ground with other people.
What made your husband start it in the first place?
Well, he is sort of a magazine junkie, and he actually had started another magazine prior to that with his first wife, the mother of my stepson, who I work with now, which is it's kind of got an interesting genealogy. It started as New Age Journal, and then it became Body and Soul, and then it was recently sold to Martha Stewart Living, which is kind of funny.
Kidding.
So he's kind of got magazines in the blood, and when he started, so he went off from New Age Journal and kept being drawn to wanting to start another magazine, but he kept thinking, well, the world doesn't really need another magazine. And what he finally realized was that what the world does need is a trusted source of filtered information. We get deluged with so much information all the time. And so, so what we do is we're kind of a clutter cutter. As I mentioned, we have all these different sources, and we're kind of out dousing. And we really sort of filter what's out there that we think is really essential and important information for people, but always with this point of view of what's empowering, what's hopeful, what's going to help us evolve and transform.
Now, how did you get involved in running the magazine? Did you have any expertise before this?
No, I've been a writer for, I'd written for the magazine and written for other places, but I was really primarily, I have 3 children and a stepson, and my stepson I work with now, and so I was really primarily a mother, and although I did, I was involved in helping to start a foundation, and I was involved in helping to start the school that my kids went to. And what happened was that I'd never had any official role in the company, although I always was, writing, and in many ways the magazine was always a reflection of our lives and the things that we were personally exploring. But I hadn't, I hadn't had any. We always said I had lots of influence but no responsibility, and so I was not particularly looking to get involved. But my husband kind of got burned out, and he went on a sabbatical, and other people were running the company, and at a certain point it just was kind of rudderless, and the person who was running the company at that point just felt like the initiating energy was kind of missing, and asked Eric to come back in and give it another push. And at that point he'd been out of the day-to-day for a while and realized that he'd been kind of a workaholic and didn't really want to go back to that way of functioning again, so he asked me to come in and co-chair the company, and that was in the end of '98, I think. And so we co-chaired the company quite briefly, actually, and then it became clear that his heart wasn't in it. It was not the right place for him anymore, and so he pulled back entirely. And at that time we had someone else as a president who was running the day-to-day operations, and after about a year that person left, and it began to dawn on me that the company was hemorrhaging money, and
Ooh.
Everyone was looking at me like I was supposed to know what to do.
So how did you figure out what to do so quickly?
Well, it's been a few years, and it's been a lot of trial and error. And I joke, but it's not a joke. I mean, I have a stepson and then 3 more sons, and so I'm used to a fair amount of chaos. Apparently I thrive on it. And it really has been a question of cleaning up one mess after the last. I think a lot of life is just cleaning up messes and rolling up your sleeves and seeing what's next. So,
well, out of this, what did you learn?
Oh boy, how long have we got? I've learned a lot. It's been a really quite wonderful crucible. As I said, the magazine was financially in trouble, and we really had to go through a real sort of soul searching. I mean, not just me personally, but the whole company and everyone in it, about, do we really deserve to be in business? Have we served our use? I mean, we've been in business since 1984, and maybe we'd run, we'd finished our run, and so I did 2 things. Well, first of all, I tried to find a partner who could really advance the mission of the magazine, which is all about giving people information that's empowering, that they can then take out and use to connect with others and take action in the world. And
sounds like our show here.
Hey, well, that and so not just any partner was going to do. And I found someone that was a wonderful partner. And then, but they were in a slightly different business. And when we really got down to the nuts and bolts of it, they just didn't feel like they could take on the challenges of our business. So it fell through at the last minute. And at that point, I was pretty desperate. That was when the really deep soul searching happened. And so we kind of decided to put it out to our readers. And there are 2 things that you never, ever, ever do in the magazine business. And so I probably did both of them.
Which are?
Well, the first thing is that the magazine business, junk mail, direct mail, that's how you generate subscriptions. And it's a constant thing that you need to always be generating new subscriptions. And we had no money to do direct mail, so I had to stop doing direct mail. And that's like, the equivalent would be cutting the engine in mid-flight if you were on an airplane.
Whoa.
So that was the first thing I did. And then the second thing that you should never, ever do is you should never admit that you're in trouble. So I promptly put a rap on the cover of the magazine to our subscribers and said, here's our situation, and we really need to know, we need your feedback. Do we deserve to live? And And if we do, we need you. And what happened was that a large number of them communicated with us and said, no, the information you provide is so key to my life and has given,
How wonderful.
It's wonderful. I mean, it's
But did they send you money?
Well, actually what happened was a lot of people renewed for numbers of years, gave gift subscriptions. I mean, it certainly wasn't anything like enough to pull us out of the woods, but it was enough to give us the inspiration and vote of confidence we needed, and it surfaced an angel who gave us a credit line while we could kind of retool. So it worked.
Nina, you've been doing a variety of things in the past 20 some odd years or so.
That's true.
How have you been able to mesh them all together in your current capacity as CEO?
Yeah, chair and CEO. Well, as I mentioned, I came into this gig without really any kind of training, and it was intimidating. And I thought of my husband as being the visionary. He was kind of like, he'd go off to the mountaintop and he'd come back with the tablet and and so when people were looking to me to solve, to take us into the future and to know what to do when we were really in trouble, I felt completely overwhelmed and ill-equipped for the job. And until I realized that, that in fact I have created many things in addition to my, being the conduit for my children, and that it's a really different way that women function. And
can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. That my way is much more collaborative. It's much more intuitive. It's much more of a process, and I've always worked very closely with other women, which is really important to me because I think that we do work differently. And
I think what it is that we respect each other's intuitiveness.
Yeah.
Whereas a man, what? Now, where did she get that idea from?
Yeah.
Whereas a woman would just take it for granted that if you came up with something from left field, okay, let's go with it.
Yeah, and people will say now, okay, I've heard you say that 4 times now. Apparently you mean it. Now let's try, I don't understand it. Could we delve in a little bit and see where you're going with that? And, I joke about how my kids were my training ground for business, but they really were. And they, I think that women, of course, tend to be better multitaskers. You're doing 7 things at once. I used to say to my kids, I can only do 7 things at once. And they're like, Mom, you're only doing 4. And that the sort of triage of being surrounded by kids and dogs and chaos of okay, what needs to happen first here and what needs to happen first, and how and also the with a child, the tone that you set is so important. I discovered the hard way that when I was nervous or angst-ridden or under pressure or impatient or whatever, that's the tone I set, and that's basically what I got back from my children. And they're a very good instant feedback mechanism. And, so I think I learned that one of the most important and powerful things that I could do was be calm and centered in myself to the degree that
You
I'm
can
capable
be.
of moment to moment. And actually, there was one time that I actually sent someone in to clean his office up. I mean, it goes down to mundane things like, how about we talk about that after you go take a walk and get something to eat? Fresh air and food. I mean, those sort of basic things. So, I think a lot of what I've been able to do is just, I think I have fairly good common sense, actually. And I feel like one of my kids, a friend of mine said to him, do you still listen to your mother? He was, 21 at the time. And he went, well, yeah, I mean, she's only talking common sense. And I thought, great,
right.
I've done something right, But I think a lot of what I've done has really been just common sense,
Mm.
But I think common sense is wildly underestimated in our world. Like, well, how's this going to play out, and how are people going to feel about it, and how are they going to respond to it, and what do we need to do first, and kind of really basic listening and prioritizing skills that don't have to do with a lot of sophisticated stuff on your resume.
I noticed on your bio you were talking about Unreasonable Women for Earth or something?
The Unreasonable Women for the Earth.
Okay. What is that?
It's, well, George Bernard Shaw said that a reasonable woman conforms to the world, and the world conforms to an unreasonable woman. And what we need now are more unreasonable women.
Oh, good. I like that.
I thought you might like that. So, and I first heard about that from a woman named Diane Wilson, who was a shrimp fisherwoman in the Gulf, and who doesn't have much of an education, pretty salt of the earth kind of person, fourth generation shrimp fisherman, has 5 kids, was married to a Vietnam vet, and she just started to notice what was happening to the ecosystem in the Gulf of Mexico where she lives. And she became...
Rachel Carson, Silent Spring.
Exactly,
okay.
exactly. And so she became more and more knowledgeable, and the more knowledgeable she became, the more she just was compelled to stand up for this part of the country that she loved, and for her children's future. And so she became an activist, and has gone on a number of hunger strikes and has confronted chemical companies about their discharges into the Gulf of Mexico. And she's really sort of a Joan of Arc figure. And I heard her speak and was just blown away. And and it really started me on a process of thinking about, well, what do I care deeply enough about to stand up for? And so that where Unreasonable Women for the Earth came from is that Diane spoke at a conference, which is where I first encountered her, and Nina Simons from Bioneers, who was the person who was organizing the conference, invited a subgroup of women, the most unreasonable women that she knew, to come together and explore what it means to be an unreasonable woman in this time. I mean, look where reason has gotten us. Not someplace most of us want to be. So clearly it's time to be unreasonable. And so out of that group came, at that meeting, it was extraordinary. It was an incredible combination of powerful women doing important work in the world, but also taking care of our bodies and doing yoga and speaking from the heart and singing together and really exploring how we could take our gifts and amplify them and empower them with each other, to really radiate out into the world. And many things have come out of that group, one of which is the whole Code Pink movement.
What exactly is that?
Well, Code Pink started as a vigil in front of the White House before the Iraq War, and I was down there for the beginning of it, and it was started by Diane Wilson and Medea Benjamin from Global Exchange, and Starhawk, and a number, Jody Evans, a number of strong women, and
strong, unreasonable women.
Strong and highly unreasonable women, and so it was. The reason it was Code Pink is sort of in contrast to Code Orange and Code Red, and it's got layers of meaning. It actually was the name of the listserv that came out of Unreasonable Women, but it also happens to be, a different. Code Pink is about let's go for love and compassion as opposed to fear and terror. It also is Code Pink is a term used when a baby or child's been abducted from a hospital. And so it has to do with the abducting of our children's futures. And it had to do with peace, but more than that, it had to do with asking the kinds of questions about our economy and about social justice and about the environment that simply aren't being asked the way they need to right now. And so, and also because pink is playful and creative and,
I think it's
feminine, exactly. And you can't be dour and grumpy and wearing pink, I think. You have to, and so for me, what happened was that I went down there and I was fasted for a week in front of the White House with this group of women, and we were all decked out in pink, and it was incredibly charismatic, and people started coming to us and saying, what's Code Pink? And really what it is to me is I often wear a Code Pink button, and it's an invitation to people to say, what's Code Pink? And then you say, well, Code Pink is you coming up to me and asking me that question so that we can start to talk about what we really care about and what's important to us and what we're willing to stand up for in this world, and to do it in a way that's engaging people and inviting them and creating common ground together, as opposed to going at loggerheads and the sort of negative fear-based kinds of us against them politics that's so prevalent now. So anyway, that's
Code Pink.
Code Pink.
Unreasonable women
for the earth. And
I think
Code
that's
Pink.
great. I think
Yeah.
it's really terrific.
Yeah, it's good.
And how many members do you have?
Well, it's a kind of a leaderless network that there are over 100 Code Pink chapters around the country and around the world, actually. When I wrote about it in the magazine, and one woman came from Portugal. She read my piece and turned around literally within 24 hours and came to Washington for a big, parade we called it, because it was very festive and very pink last year. And just felt compelled to come be a part of it. And actually, I got arrested in front of the White House then, which was the only time that's ever happened to me. And I didn't actually set out to, but in the moment, it just felt like this is what I need to stand up for. And we were very deliberately, we were singing and really intending to radiate peace and an intention of the intention of peace and love. And it was an amazing group. It was Alice Walker, Maxine Hong Kingston, Susan Griffin, Amy Goodman, along with lots of other people, and all ages. And it wasn't a premeditated action, but we were after the parade march. We were walking in front of the White House, and all of a sudden they tried to push everyone out in front of the White House, and I think what we were actually arrested for was simply standing in front of the White House. You are not allowed to simply stand peacefully in front of the White House.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and you're not, our ability to speak up in this country is being so deeply compromised, and it was the most bizarre exercise. I just can't even imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars went into it. I mean, this is 25 women peacefully standing in front of the White House, okay? And there were motorcycle cops, horse cops, helicopters, bicycles, snipers up on tops of the buildings, stormtroopers. I mean, there were thousands of, state police, city police. It was the most incredible paramilitary exercise I certainly have ever witnessed, for 25 women singing peacefully in front of the White House in pink.
Go Code Pink.
Yeah. And I guess the thing that I would like to say that's that really has to, maybe it has to do with this audience is just I just feel like we're in a time when it's so important for all of us, but particularly for women, to come from a place of courage and love and generosity, and
not be afraid.
And not be, yeah. I mean, fear is, fear. We can't let fear incapacitate us. And as Einstein said, something like our problems can't be solved at the level that they're created. And to me, what that means is that our problems are created out of a fear-based way of looking at the world. And to me, the way that we're really going to find the solutions is, we're more creative. We're more equipped to solve the seemingly insurmountable. I think the only way that we're going to solve them is by amplifying our capacity to love, because that's going to generate the creativity and the intuition that'll take us to the solutions.
So what advice would you give to women?
I think that we in some ways feminism really went awry, in the sense that we really got the idea that we were supposed to do what a man does, only more so,
Right.
And I think that some of the the Iraqi prisoner abuse stuff is really the playing out of that, in a certain way, and that what we need to do at that point is not to throw out feminism, but to really look at what are feminine values of love and compassion and cherishing and caring, and how do we really assert those values? And I think we're in a time that's love versus fear, where it's kind of binary, one or the other. Which are we going to choose? And I don't mean just for women, but the feminine, that's about nurturing and caring and compassion. That's what we need to stand up for, and that's what we have to not be afraid afraid to stand up for and assert. And in some ways that's been seen as wimpy or inferior, and it's not. I mean, every great spiritual teacher has always talked about the power of love, and the feminine is the embodiment of that. When you combine the feminine with the sort of masculine will, ability to act in the world, and then that's what's really needed, is that union of masculine and feminine in all of us, men and women.
The only trouble is, I think people become very intimidated by a strong woman.
Well, what can you do? Help them along.
I want to thank you so much for joining me, Nina.
Well, thank you.
It's been terrific. And I hope you've learned something about how to transfer your skills from one profession to another and getting the word out.